Today we're going to test out the Debuffer build. I've seen people in the Japanese server building this, but I haven't seen anyone on top of the leaderboards in the Glover servers use this tactic. I think that this Debuffer build will be the new meta in the next few days, especially since Taurus Cup is coming. I'm going to guide you on which support cards and characters you can do this Debuffer build with. With that, enough yapping and let's start the video. We're gonna be using Symbol Rudolph as an example because she's the only umamusume that I have who has the potential to build the Debuffer build. Here are the list of the other umas that can use this tactic if you don't have a Rudolph. Basically, you can think of this build as a supporter build. Now you ask like a dumbass, what is a Debuffer build? Basically, you can think of this build as a supporter build so that your other umas can have an advantage. For example, in my case, Rudolph is just there to slow down the other enemies so that her teammates could shine and have an easier time winning. So with that, let's get to building. The first thing that you should do when you're building any character is to go to Game Torah so that we can see which legacy units will be a good partner for Rudolph. Unlike my other videos, I don't really care which one you partner her with as long as they're at the top 10 of the legacy units in Game Torah. But what I do care about is the one with the most affinity with width. So I want you to partner Rudolph with a umamusume that can boost her width as a legacy unit. It is important to make sure that your legacy uma can upgrade Rudolph's width or any other debuffer's width because we're going to be needing a good amount of it. This is important because as we all know, width stat increase the skill activation rate of your skills, which would be important if you want your debuffer to consistently debuff your enemies. Knowing that width is going to be important, we're going to build around that for our support cards. The support cards may vary for other debuffer, but for Rudolph, the sequence will be 3 speed card, 1 stamina card, and 2 width card. I think that this will be the case for most debuffers, so you can just copy this sequence for any uma debuffer that you are going to build. The stamina card is there to make sure that we could finish every race after the finals of Ura Finale, since we want to have all the skill points that we could get. And as you know, winning and placing high on races gives a lot of skill points, which should make sure that we could get all the debuff skills that will come up on our skill set. The 2 width card is, like I said, is there to increase our width since width promotes skill activation. And if all of that skill that we got don't activate, then what's the point of having a debuffer if she's not going to debuff? And lastly, 3 speed cards is there to make sure that we can finish the career mode. Here are the cards that I'm going to use for this run, and here are the alternatives. If you're not using Rudolph, I would heavily recommend using the Symbol Rudolph common support card since it has a lot of good skill debuffs in its pocket. Before we go to the career mode, keep in mind that we're building Rudolph for medium, and this will be the case for most debuffers. This is because most of the debuffs needs the requirement of medium racetrack and the late runners. And you know that we won't be able to use them unless we meet the criteria of those two. Here are the stats that we need to hit at the end of the race, and with that, let's start the career mode. At the first 11 turns, before the debut race, we want to train where most of your friends are training, because we want to have rainbow training as early as possible. This is because we want to min-max the stats that we can get on the run. Normally, I say that this is an absolute rule, but it is not the case today. If you see a hint on a support card that has a debuff skills that you still doesn't have, then you should always train with that support card unless there are 3 rainbow training in the speed training, or you're still building up your friendship level to orange and there are 5 friends training on a certain stat. This is the only 2 situation when you can break this rule, so keep this in mind. If you forget which support cards has the debuff skills that you still don't have, you could quickly check it by just going to this menu, click and hold the support card that you want to check. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is that our main rule for the failure rate is if it's over 25%, then just go rest or train on wit so that you could lower the failure rate. You could break this rule if you think that you will lose next race if you somehow don't train a certain stat. But this is a big gamble, so think hard before you make your final decision, because you're gonna be wasting a lot of turns if you somehow make your Uma's mood go down. With that, let's summarize everything that you need to do. First is to only use these 7 umamusumes that I'm showing in the screen. Second is take a legacy unit that can bring up your wit stat. It doesn't need to be full 64, but it could be just around 40 to 50. The main support cards that you absolutely need to have is going to be the Symboli Rudolph common card and Marvelous Sunday. In the career mode, make sure that in the first 11 turns, train where most of your friends are in, and to always look out for hints on support cards that has a debuff skill. And lastly, don't train if the failure rate is over 25% unless you really need to. I really think that this is going to be the new meta for medium runners in the global server, just like how it was in the Japanese server. This may be a bit difficult to finish since this is not the normal rotation that you do in the career mode, but if you manage to finish it, then you should be invincible in the Taurus Cup, especially if your enemy doesn't have this build. But you know what they say, to see is to believe. That's why we're going to team trials right now to test out this build.